Welcome back to LPBW Update, your number one source for the news that happens when the cameras stop rolling. Today, we are breaking down a story so explosive, so shocking, it threatens to tear the Roloff family and the show itself apart forever. We have been following this for weeks, piecing together information from our trusted sources inside the production and the Hillsborough community, and what we've uncovered is a tale of manipulation and deceit that goes deeper than anyone could have imagined. It was a terrifying story of harassment that shocked the fan base when it first broke. A story of slashed tires, threatening notes, and a woman living in fear. But the real horror is that the victim was also the perpetrator, and it was all caught on tape. The story you are about to hear is based on insider reports and exclusive theories pieced together by our team. This is the story of the restraining order hoax. Before we dive into the mountain of evidence and the shocking courtroom betrayals, do me a favor. If you believe in getting to the truth, and if you've ever felt that something wasn't quite right behind the scenes of Little People, Big World, then hit that like button right now. And if you're not already subscribed, click that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications. You are not going to want to miss a single update on this developing story. This is the biggest scandal in the show's history, and we will be here covering every single twist and turn. It all began in November of 2025. The headlines were brutal, painting a picture of a beloved family matriarch spiraling out of control. TMZ, People Magazine, The Sun, they all ran with the story, fueled by carefully leaked documents from the Washington County Courthouse. Amy Roloff slapped with restraining order amid harassment claims by Caryn Chandler. The articles were accompanied by grainy photos presented as evidence. A car with a long, ugly scratch down the driver's side door, another showing a tire that was visibly flat, and a close-up of a note tucked under a windshield wiper with jagged, angry-looking letters that read, "Leave him alone or you'll be sorry." Caryn Chandler, in a statement released through a newly hired publicist, claimed to be terrified for her safety. The statement spoke of a pattern of escalating intimidation and unhinged behavior from Amy, which she had allegedly endured for months. It was the culmination of a narrative that had been carefully, almost artistically, constructed for over a decade. This was the foundational lie, the central pillar of Caryn's public persona, that Amy Roloff is a jealous, bitter ex-wife, incapable of moving on, a perpetual thorn in the side of Matt and Caryn's happiness. For years, fans had watched scenes on TLC that seemed to reinforce this. A sharp word from Amy, an eye roll, a moment of frustration, all of it was edited and framed to present her as the problem, while Caryn was portrayed as the patient, understanding partner, the long-suffering woman who just wanted peace. Sources inside the production have told us for years that Caryn was exceptionally skilled at managing her image, often having quiet conversations with producers to suggest camera placement or story angles that would cast her in a favorable light and Amy in a negative one. She was, in essence, producing her own storyline, and the restraining order was set to be her masterpiece. The legal filing was a work of fiction designed for maximum public impact. It detailed alleged incidents with chilling specificity. On October 12th, Caryn claimed she heard someone rattling the doorknob of her and Matt's new house late at night. On October 25th, she found one of her prize-winning roses inexplicably decapitated. And then the grand finale in early November, the slashed tire, the scratched car, and the threatening note, all discovered on a single morning when she was about to leave for a charity event. She presented these incidents to the police and the court as a clear and present danger. The trap was meticulously designed. If the restraining order was granted, Amy would be legally barred from setting foot on large portions of Roloff Farms, the very land she had built and raised her family on. It would be a legal and public relations coup. cementing Caryn's position as the new matriarch and painting Amy as so unstable that she required court intervention. It was a vicious, calculated move designed to utterly destroy Amy's reputation and sever her remaining ties to the farm. But Caryn made one fatal miscalculation. She underestimated Amy Roloff. She saw the woman she had helped portray on television. Emotional, sometimes indecisive, and easily flustered. She didn't see the woman who had weathered decades of a difficult marriage, raised 4 children in the public eye, and navigated the complex politics of a family business. She didn't see a woman who had grown tired of being gaslighted and manipulated. A woman who, a year prior, had decided to prepare for war. Our sources confirmed that in late 2024, Amy had begun to notice a pattern of small, unsettling events. It wasn't anything overt, nothing she could prove, but it was a quiet campaign of psychological warfare. An heirloom photo album from her bookshelf would suddenly be found in the garage. A private conversation she had with Chris on their porch would be twisted and repeated back to her days later by a farmhand, presented as a rumor. Items in her kitchen would be subtly rearranged. It was classic gaslighting, designed to make her feel like she was losing her mind, to make her doubt her own memory and perception. It was death by 1,000 paper cuts. Amy confided in Chris, who agreed something was deeply wrong. She wasn't paranoid, she was being targeted. So Amy made a decision. She decided to fight back, not with confrontation, but with technology. Quietly, without telling anyone except Chris, she invested several $1,000s in a state-of-the-art security system. This wasn't some off-the-shelf system from a big box store. This was a network of sophisticated, motion-activated, high-definition micro cameras. They were tiny, weatherproof, and equipped with night vision and crystal-clear audio recording. She placed them with strategic precision. One was disguised as a sprinkler head covering the shared farm driveway that both she and Matt's homes used. Another was hidden inside a birdhouse with a perfect view of the parking area near the big house. A third was tucked into the decorative trim of her own porch, covering her front door and yard. She covered every public and private access point around her property. She wasn't looking for a fight. She was creating an insurance policy. She was collecting objective, undeniable truth in a world built on subjective, edited reality. For nearly a year, the cameras recorded nothing more than deer wandering across the lawn and delivery trucks coming and going. And then came the night of November 8th, 2025. When the news of the restraining order broke, Amy was silent. The public, fueled by the leaked reports, largely turned against her. The comments on social media were horrific. I always knew she was crazy. Caryn is a saint for putting up with her. Finally, Matt is free from her drama. Through it all, Amy said nothing. Her lawyer released a simple statement. Ms. Roloff denies these baseless allegations and looks forward to presenting the truth in court. Caryn, meanwhile, was on a media blitz, giving tearful, exclusive interviews to friendly bloggers and gossip sites, detailing her ordeal. She played the victim role to perfection. She was convincing, she was compelling, and it was all a lie. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for late November. The Washington County courtroom was packed. On one side sat Caryn Chandler, flanked by Matt Roloff and a high-powered attorney from a prestigious Portland law firm. Caryn looked somber, occasionally dabbing a tissue at her dry eyes, a portrait of a woman wronged. Matt looked grim, the loyal partner supporting his terrified love. On the other side sat Amy Roloff and Chris Marek. Amy was calm, composed, her face a mask of quiet resolve. Chris sat beside her, his hand resting reassuringly on her arm. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Caryn's lawyer went first, laying out the case with dramatic flair. He presented the photos of the car, the tire, the note. He spoke of Caryn's fear, her sleepless nights, her feeling of being a prisoner in her own home. He painted a picture of Amy as a woman consumed by a toxic obsession. He then called Caryn to the stand. In a soft, trembling voice, she recounted the story she had told the police and the media. She described finding the note, her heart pounding in her chest. She described seeing the deep, vicious scratch on her new Lexus, a gift from Matt. She described the sick feeling of knowing her home was no longer a safe place. Her testimony was flawless. It was a performance worthy of an award. When she finished, the courtroom was silent. It seemed like an open and shut case. Amy Roloff's reputation was about to be officially and legally annihilated. Then, it was Amy's lawyer's turn. He was an older, unassuming man, not the flashy type Caryn had hired. He stood up and said, "Your Honor, the defense has no questions for Ms. Chandler at this time. However, we would like to present a single piece of evidence, a video file labeled Exhibit A." Caryn's lawyer immediately objected. "Objection, Your Honor. We have not seen this evidence. This is surprise testimony." Amy's lawyer calmly responded, "It is rebuttal evidence, Your Honor, directly contradicting the sworn testimony of the plaintiff. It was recorded on the plaintiff's property in an area with no expectation of privacy on the night of the alleged incident." The judge, a stern-faced woman named Judge Albright, looked intrigued. "Objection overruled. I'll allow it. Bailiff, please play the video on the courtroom monitors." A low murmur went through the courtroom. Caryn shot a confused glance at her lawyer. Matt leaned forward in his seat. The large monitors in the courtroom, previously dark, flickered to life. The image was astonishingly clear, a high-definition, black and white picture from a low angle. It was clearly nighttime, but the infrared was so good you could see every detail. The timestamp in the corner read November 8th, 2025, 2:17 a.m. The view was of a driveway, and parked in the center of the frame was Caryn's white Lexus. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then, a figure walked into the frame from the left. The person was wearing a dark hooded sweatshirt with the hood pulled up low over their face. The figure moved with a familiar, slightly shuffling gait. The figure approached the Lexus, paused, and looked around furtively. Then, the figure reached into a pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and tucked it under the windshield wiper of the driver's side door. The courtroom gasped, but it didn't stop there. The hooded figure then reached into another pocket and pulled out a small metallic object. It glinted in the infrared light. It was a key. The figure then pressed the key against the car door, just below the handle, and with a calm, deliberate motion, dragged it along the length of the door, leaving a dark, ugly line in its wake. The figure then stepped back, admired their work for a moment, pulled a cell phone from their pocket to use as a flashlight to inspect the damage, and then turned and walked away, disappearing from the frame. A few moments later, the headlights of a familiar vehicle, Caryn's vehicle, flashed on in the background, and the car drove away from the scene. A collective audible shock rippled through the courtroom. Caryn Chandler had gone white as a sheet, her mouth hanging slightly open in disbelief. Matt Roloff stared at the screen, his face a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. He looked from the screen to Caryn and back to the screen. Amy's lawyer let the silence hang in the air for a moment before speaking. "Your Honor," he said, his voice ringing with authority, "the hooded figure in that video has a very distinctive walk. A walk that the court has had the opportunity to observe this morning as the plaintiff approached the witness stand." He paused. "But we don't need to rely on that. If the court would allow, we can zoom in on the moment the figure leaves the frame." Judge Albright nodded, her eyes wide. "Proceed." The video was replayed, and as the figure turned to leave, the lawyer directed the technician to pause and enhance the image. The hood had shifted slightly, and for a split second, the person's profile was visible in the stark infrared light. The sharp chin, the distinct nose, there was no doubt in anyone's mind. The person who had placed the note and keyed the car was Caryn Chandler. The courtroom erupted into chaos. Caryn's lawyer was on his feet, stammering, but the judge slammed her gavel down, her face a mask of pure fury. "Silence," she boomed. "Silence in this court." When the room had quieted, she turned her gaze, like a laser, onto a visibly trembling Caryn. "Ms. Chandler," the judge said, her voice dangerously low, "you have come into my courtroom under oath and presented a story of harassment. You have submitted falsified evidence. You have wasted the time of this court and the resources of law enforcement. You have attempted to use a restraining order, a tool designed to protect actual victims of abuse, as a weapon in what appears to be a personal vendetta." But the nightmare for Caryn was only just beginning, because Amy's lawyer wasn't done. He had another witness, a witness who would not only corroborate the video, but would prove that this act of self-vandalism wasn't an impulsive decision. It was a premeditated conspiracy. "The defense calls Chris Marek to the stand," Amy's lawyer announced. "This was the unexpected internal betrayal. This was the twist no one saw coming." Chris Marek, Amy's husband, the man who had always tried to stay out of the Roloff drama, walked confidently to the witness stand. He was sworn in, and Amy's lawyer began his questioning. "Mr. Marek, do you know the plaintiff, Caryn Chandler?" "Yes, I do." "And in the months leading up to the events of November 8th, did you have any unusual conversations with her?" "Yes. One in particular stands out. It was in late September. Can you please tell the court about that conversation?" Chris took a deep breath and looked directly at the judge. "It was at a family barbecue at the farm. Caryn pulled me aside, away from everyone else. She said she was concerned about Amy. She said Amy's behavior was becoming erratic and unpredictable. She claimed Amy was still obsessed with Matt and was having a hard time accepting her place in the family." A fresh wave of murmurs swept the room. Matt Roloff now looked physically ill. Chris continued, his voice steady and clear. "Then she asked me to do something. She asked me if I would keep an eye on Amy for her. She wanted me to report back to her if Amy said or did anything strange. She said, and I remember her exact words, 'It would be helpful if we had a record of these things, for the future.'" The implication was horrifyingly clear. Caryn wasn't just planning a hoax. She was trying to recruit Amy's own husband into her conspiracy. She was trying to build a case against Amy from the inside, using Chris as her unwitting spy. "And what was your response, Mr. Marek?" the lawyer asked. "I told her that I thought Amy was doing just fine and that her only problem was the constant meddling from her and Matt. I told her I found her request to be inappropriate and manipulative. I told her my wife didn't need to be monitored. The conversation ended there. I told Amy about it as soon as we got home." It was one of the reasons we felt the cameras were a necessary precaution. Chris's testimony was the final devastating blow. It established a pattern of premeditation. It proved beyond any doubt that the restraining order and the faked harassment were part of a larger, calculated plot. The video was the smoking gun, but Chris's testimony was the confession. It showed that Caryn had been laying the groundwork for this takedown for months. Judge Albright had heard enough. She didn't even wait for a closing argument. She looked at Caryn, whose face had crumpled into a mask of pure panic. "Ms. Chandler, your request for a restraining order is not only denied, it is dismissed with extreme prejudice," the judge declared, her voice echoing in the stunned silence. "This court does not take kindly to being used as a pawn. You have perjured yourself on the stand. You have filed a false police report. You have attempted to falsify evidence. This is not a family squabble. This is a criminal matter." She then turned to the district attorney's representative who was present in the courtroom. "I am referring this entire case to the district attorney's office for immediate investigation. I expect charges of perjury, filing a false police report, and falsifying evidence to be considered. This kind of malicious prosecution cannot and will not be tolerated. She slammed her gavel down. We are adjourned. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. Caryn Chandler didn't just lose the hearing. She walked out of the courtroom facing the very real possibility of significant jail time. The hunter had become the prey. The story she had so carefully crafted had exploded in her face, leaving nothing but the ugly truth in its wake. This wasn't just a lie designed to win a public relations battle. It was a crime. It was a calculated attempt to manipulate the justice system to destroy another person. The legal threat against Caryn is no longer a civil matter of a restraining order. It is a criminal case with the full weight of the state of Oregon behind it. Our legal analyst suggests that with the undeniable video evidence and the corroborating testimony from a credible witness like Chris Marek, a conviction is not just possible, but highly likely. The potential penalties are severe, including hefty fines and several years in prison. The foundational lie has been shattered. The narrative has been flipped, and the entire world of little people, big world is now on the brink. What does this mean for Matt, who sat by Caryn's side and supported her fabricated story? Did he know? Was he a part of the conspiracy, or was he just another person manipulated by a master puppeteer? What does this mean for TLC in the future of the show? Can they possibly continue filming with one of their main cast members facing serious felony charges for attempting to frame another? And what about the family? How can the Roloff children ever look at Caryn the same way again, knowing she was capable of such a cruel and calculated deception against their own mother? The questions are endless, and the drama is far from over. We are just scratching the surface of the fallout from this incredible courtroom showdown. This wasn't just a lie, it was a crime. A cold, calculated attempt to ruin a woman's life, all for the sake of power and public perception. The justice system is now involved, and the consequences will be severe. So we have to ask you, the viewers, a very important question. Based on these insider reports, do you believe Caryn Chandler should face the maximum possible penalty for this level of premeditated manipulation? Let us know your thoughts. Go to the community tab on our channel page and vote yes or no in our official poll right now. The results will be revealed in our next update. The scene outside the Washington County Courthouse was one of pure pandemonium. As the doors swung open, a blinding sea of camera flashes erupted. Reporters who had been fed the story of Amy's alleged instability for weeks were now in a frenzy, shouting questions, shoving microphones forward, but the people who emerged were not the ones they expected. Amy Roloff and Chris Marek walked out first. They didn't smile. They didn't look triumphant. They looked composed, dignified, and perhaps a little weary. Amy paused for a moment, the cameras flashing in her eyes, and a reporter yelled, "Amy, what's your reaction to the judge's decision?" She looked directly into the nearest camera, her voice clear and steady, and said only this: "The truth has a way of finding the light. That's all I have to say." And with that, she and Chris, holding hands, walked calmly through the throng to their car and drove away, leaving the chaos behind them. Minutes later, the real subjects of the media's attention emerged, and the scene devolved into a feeding frenzy. Caryn Chandler, no longer the composed victim, looked like a cornered animal. Her face was pale and blotchy, her eyes wide with terror. She clung to Matt Roloff's arm like a drowning woman. Matt himself looked utterly shell-shocked, as if he had just walked out of a bomb blast. His face, usually tanned and confident, was a ghastly shade of gray. He stared straight ahead, his eyes unfocused, completely ignoring the barrage of questions. "Caryn, did you fake the evidence?" "Matt, were you in on it? Are the DA's charges true?" They didn't answer. They were swarmed, a human tidal wave of cameras and questions pressing in on them. A source who was in the courthouse hallway told us that just moments before, Caryn had been hyperventilating, nearly collapsing into a chair while her lawyer frantically tried to calm her down. Matt, the source said, just stood against a wall, looking at his hands, completely silent, like he couldn't process what had just happened. They were shoved and jostled by the media mob until their lawyer and a court bailiff managed to carve a path to their waiting SUV. As they got in, a final image was captured by a TMZ photographer, Caryn, inside the car, her head in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably, while Matt stared blankly out the window, a man completely and utterly broken. What they were driving away to was not a quiet home where they could regroup, but the epicenter of a legal and personal tsunami. The judge's referral to the district attorney's office wasn't a suggestion. It was a command. Our legal analyst, who has experience with the Washington County justice system, tells us that when a judge personally refers a case for criminal charges based on events that happened in their own courtroom, the DA takes it extremely seriously. It's seen not just as a crime against an individual, but as an attack on the integrity of the entire judicial system. Caryn isn't just in trouble. She's in the crosshairs of a prosecutor's office that now has to make an example of her. Let's break down the charges she is almost certainly facing. First, perjury. This is the act of lying under oath. When Caryn took the stand, raised her right hand and swore to tell the truth, and then proceeded to tell a complete fabrication, she committed a felony. The video evidence makes this an airtight case. Second, filing a false police report. When she called the authorities to report the vandalism and threats, she knowingly gave false information, initiating a police investigation based on a lie. This wasted taxpayer money and law enforcement resources, and it is a serious crime in Oregon. Third, falsifying evidence. The notes she presented, the photos of the damage she herself inflicted, these were physical pieces of evidence that she knowingly created and submitted to the court to deceive them. Combined, these charges carry the potential for years in prison and crippling fines. This isn't a slap on the wrist. This is a life-altering legal catastrophe. Sources inside the DA's office are telling us that the case is being fast-tracked. The evidence is so overwhelming, the high-definition video is essentially a signed confession, that prosecutors are confident in securing a conviction. The question now becomes, what will Caryn do? Our legal analyst suggests her only real play is to seek a plea bargain. But a plea bargain for something this blatant won't be a get-out-of-jail-free card. The DA will want her to plead guilty to at least one felony charge, and they will likely still recommend jail time. And here's where the next, even more sinister chapter of this story begins to unfold. In a plea negotiation, prosecutors often want something more. They want cooperation. They will undoubtedly ask Caryn one very simple, very explosive question. Was anyone else involved? Did anyone else know about your plan? All eyes now turn to the man who sat beside her in court, the man who stared blankly out the car window, Matt Roloff. This is the billion-dollar question that is tearing the fan base apart and, according to our insiders, has created a chasm in the Roloff family that may never be bridged. Was Matt Roloff a co-conspirator, or was he the world's biggest dupe? Let's explore the two prevailing theories that are being hotly debated behind the scenes. Theory number one, Matt was in on it from the beginning. Proponents of this theory point to his long and contentious history with Amy. For years, Matt has publicly and privately complained about Amy's continued presence and influence on the farm. The restraining order would have been the perfect final solution to a problem he has wanted to solve for over a decade. It would have legally removed her, giving him and Caryn complete and total control. Was the hoax his idea? Maybe not, but did he know about it? Did he encourage it? A source very close to the farm's operations told us that in the weeks leading up to the November incident, Matt was more agitated than ever about a shared property line dispute with Amy. He was allegedly heard telling a farmhand, "Something has got to be done. I can't live like this anymore." Was Caryn's plot that something? Furthermore, one has to ask, how could Matt, who was married to Amy for 27 years, who knows her every habit and mannerism, possibly believe she was capable of slashing tires and writing threatening notes? It seems inconceivable that he wouldn't have questioned Caryn's story, unless, of course, he already knew it was a fabrication because he had approved the script. Then there is theory number 2. Matt was just another victim of Caryn's manipulation. This theory paints Matt not as a villain, but as a man completely blinded by his devotion to a manipulative woman. For years, fans have watched Caryn subtly manage Matt, guiding his decisions and isolating him from those who might question her influence, including his own children. It's possible she saw this plot as her own personal project, something too risky to involve him in directly. She could have sold him the same story she sold the world, playing the terrified victim so perfectly that he never once suspected the truth. His stunned, horrified reaction in the courtroom gives this theory some weight. That wasn't the face of a co-conspirator whose plan had just failed. It was the face of a man whose entire world had just been revealed as a lie. A source who has known the family for years put it this way: Matt is a master of denial. He wants to believe in the fairy tale, and Caryn sold him one. He's not evil, but his judgment where Caryn is concerned has been compromised for a very, very long time. He's as much a victim of her gaslighting as Amy was. Either way, the relationship between Matt and Caryn is now facing an extinction-level event. If he was involved, he could face criminal charges himself for conspiracy. If he wasn't, how can he possibly stand by a woman who orchestrated such a monstrous lie, a lie that could have destroyed the mother of his children? How can he ever trust her again? The financial toll of her legal defense will be astronomical. The public humiliation is absolute. Our insiders are saying the tension in the big house is unbearable. They are barely speaking. Matt is allegedly consulting with his own separate legal team, trying to figure out how to distance himself from the toxic fallout and protect his assets. The dream house they built together, the symbol of their future, has become a prison of paranoia and resentment. And what about the children? For Zach, Jeremy, Molly, and Jacob, this entire ordeal is not a shock. It is a vindication. For years, they have watched Caryn's slow, methodical takeover of their family's legacy. They have felt their mother being pushed aside, and they themselves have been marginalized. Zach's public and bitter falling out with Matt over the farm was, at its core, about Caryn's influence. Zach and Tori felt that Caryn was pulling the strings, whispering in Matt's ear, and poisoning the well. Jeremy and Audrey have kept a very deliberate and noticeable distance from the farm and from Caryn for years. Now, the mask has been ripped off, and the person they suspected was underneath has been revealed to the world. A source extremely close to Zach and Tori has told us that Zach's reaction upon hearing the news from the courtroom was one of grim satisfaction. He allegedly told Tori, "I'm not surprised. I'm just glad everyone else finally sees it. I knew she was a snake from day one." This event has solidified the rift between Zach and his father, but it has powerfully reunited him with his mother. The children are reportedly rallying around Amy, a protective wall of support. We are told there have been emotional phone calls with her children apologizing for not speaking up more forcefully in the past, and Amy reassuring them that she understood the difficult position they were in. This scandal hasn't divided the Roloff children. It has united them, perhaps more strongly than ever, behind their mother. The battle lines, which were once blurry and confusing, are now crystal clear. It's Amy and her children on one side, and Matt and Caryn, isolated in disgrace, on the other. This brings us to the multi-million-dollar elephant in the room: TLC and the future of Little People, Big World. The network is facing an unprecedented crisis. For over a decade, their editors and producers have meticulously crafted a narrative that is now undeniably a lie. They presented Caryn as the patient, loving partner and Amy as the difficult, bitter ex. They were either complicit in this deception or they were astonishingly incompetent, completely fooled by one of their cast members. Either way, their credibility is shot. Behind the scenes at TLC, we are hearing the word panic. Reality television contracts almost always contain a morality clause, which allows the network to terminate a contract if a cast member is charged with or convicted of a crime that brings the show into disrepute. There is no question that Caryn's actions qualify. The network is legally in the clear to fire her immediately. But will they? A source inside the production has revealed that the producers are completely divided. One faction is demanding the show be canceled immediately to cut their losses and distance the network from the scandal. They argue that the brand is irreparably damaged and that continuing to film would be a public relations nightmare. But another, more cynical faction sees this as a twisted opportunity. This is the biggest storyline they have ever had, our source says. The ratings would be through the roof. They are exploring ways to film the fallout, to document Matt and Caryn's crisis, to capture the family's reaction. But the legalities are a minefield. How can you put a camera on someone who is facing felony charges? How can you film a family that is imploding under the weight of criminal activity? Any attempt to do so would look exploitative and ghoulish. The most likely scenario, our insiders are telling us, is that production will be halted indefinitely. They may try to cobble together one final tell-all season from existing footage and carefully controlled interviews, but the days of following the roll-offs around during pumpkin season are, in all likelihood, over forever. Caryn's lie didn't just blow up her own life. It may have just killed the golden goose that has enriched them all for nearly 2 decades. And in the middle of this swirling vortex of chaos, there are Amy and Chris, vindicated, victorious. But our sources say they are taking no pleasure in Caryn's downfall. Amy is said to be experiencing a profound sense of relief, the feeling of a weight she has been carrying for a decade finally being lifted. For years, she was made to feel like she was the crazy one, the problem. The constant subtle gaslighting from Caryn and Matt had taken its toll. Now, the world knows the truth. But with that relief comes a deep sadness. Sadness for what has become of the family she built. Sadness for her children who have had to endure this toxicity. And perhaps even a sliver of pity for Matt, a man she once loved who is now trapped in the wreckage of the life he chose. Chris Marek has emerged from this as the unlikely hero of the story. His calm, confident testimony was the kill shot that exposed Caryn's premeditation. He proved in a very public and powerful way that his loyalty is to Amy and to the truth. His actions have silenced any critics who ever questioned his motives for being with Amy. He is her rock, her defender, and the partner who helped her find the strength to fight back. Together, they have weathered the ultimate storm and have come out the other side stronger than ever. The future for them is now an open book. The legal cloud that prevented Amy from feeling at home on her own property is gone. The restraining order is dust. But is the farm now tainted forever? Can she ever truly enjoy the land, knowing the darkness that unfolded there? Or will this finally be the catalyst for her and Chris to sell their property and move on, truly and finally free from the roll-off drama? Friends of the couple say they are taking it one day at a time, focusing on healing and processing the events of the past few weeks. They have won the war, but the battlefield is littered with casualties and the scars will remain. The 8-decade-long illusion, carefully constructed for television cameras and tabloid magazines, has been shattered by the undeniable truth of a single hidden camera. The story of the victim and the villain has been flipped on its head. Caryn Chandler is facing a criminal trial. Matt Roloff is facing an impossible choice between his partner and his family, his legacy. The Roloff children are united in their mother's defense, their worst fears about their father's new life confirmed. And the television show that started it all is teetering on the brink of collapse. The fallout is just beginning. We are hearing whispers of a major announcement coming from Matt Roloff's camp in the next 48 hours, an attempt at damage control that our sources say could make things even worse. We will be following that in every other development right here. So before you go, I want you to think about the incredible chain reaction we've just witnessed, all started by one woman's lie. Who do you think will be the next major casualty of this scandal? Will Matt's reputation and business be destroyed, or will the show itself be the final victim? Comment below with your predictions. And make sure you are subscribed with that notification bell clicked, because LPBW Update is your only source for the inside story, and trust me, you are not going to want to miss what happens next.